friends, I am so very excited for today's manga review because for the first time I have watched almost the entirety of a shoujo anime, and that is because of the manga I am reviewing today. Happy Friday, my friends! I am so excited that you are here. Oh my goodness, I cannot wait to jump into this manga review because I hope it goes awesome. There's so much I want to say, and I'm like, this is one time that I wish I talked about spoilers on my channel because there are so many things that I want to say about this. But in case you're wondering what manga it is that I'm going to be talking about, it is AO HARU RIDE. Oh my goodness, I finally read it. Shout out to Mark and Pippa who gifted me earlier volumes. I think they gifted me volumes 2 through 4, trying to get it, but it's not working. Okay, now I was able to put them down, but yes, volumes 1 through 5, and oh my goodness, well, volumes 2 through, I had volume 1, but this series, oh my goodness, it's so great to read an AO Sakisaka manga. I don't know what it is about her storytelling. It is just so beautiful and so wonderful. First though, if you're not familiar with this series, because I admit I've seen it around and I read Strobe Edge, which I did a manga review of. I absolutely love that series. I don't know which one is my favorite. I love them both for different reasons, and I'm sort of like, now I need to go reread Strobe Edge because I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm getting ahead of myself because I'm really excited. So first, like I said, what this manga is about our main girl here, Futaba, and this young man here, Kyo. They knew each other back in middle school, and they both really liked each other. They both said that well, not both of them. Futaba loved him, had a huge crush on him, but something happens, and Kyo actually ends up moving, like over the summer, and she never sees him again until, fast forward, until I think it's the end of their first year in high school. She sees him, and she still has a crush on him. That was her first love, and they end up more or less sort of confessing that she still loves him, or that she loved him, excuse me, and that he also felt the same way about her. But Kyo is like, well, we can't go back in the past, rekindle what we lost. No, they're both too different. They both changed, and so begins their journey, their adventure in high school, and just all of the romantic shenanigans. If you've read AO Sakisaka, any of her works, you know that there's so much drama, there's so much angst, there's so much love, there's so many tears, there's so many feels. Just everything is in this series. Oh my goodness, I don't even know where to begin. There's probably gonna be a lot of editing in this video because I keep getting excited and I keep cutting myself off because I'm like, I just don't know where to start. I really, really enjoyed this manga. Like I said, there's just something very special about AO Sakisaka's work, and I started this and it just was like totally pulling me in. I really feel like she just put so much love and effort and care into her characters. Honestly, out of any manga that I've read, I love her sidebar panels, or the sidebars. I love reading more about her story, what she feels. We didn't have quite as many sidebars. We had more like full page, which was really exciting. I always love just hearing her share and seeing the dedication that she has to her stories. It's very moving and very touching, and I honestly just feel it shines on page. This story was definitely like no exception. I love the premise. I love the idea of these two falling in love when they were younger and then them meeting up again when they're older and totally different and changed, and not figuring out and wondering, do they still care for each other, and then actually falling in love with each other as the two new people that they are. Like, I love that premise. I'll just eat it up like it's candy. I feel it's very, very romantic. I feel that just this series, oh my goodness, like I said, there were so many feels, but let's start with the characters because I can talk about the characters pretty much spoiler free. I think that is the one thing that I really loved a lot more than Strobe Edge, and I feel bad saying that because I love the characters in Strobe Edge, but I really love this cast of characters a lot. I found Futaba, our main girl, extremely relatable, and man, those first few volumes, I just love her character development. While this is definitely a romantic story, I love seeing her personally as a character change and her want to change and how she makes these subtle changes for herself and being the person that she's want to be. That was just amazing. Like, I really, really love that. And as my husband and I were watching the anime, I just felt all those feelings I felt in the beginning of how other characters affected her and how she hid who she really was. And I always find that really sad in any manga, though you see it more often, I feel like, in shoujo manga, where the main girl decides to change herself, and usually not for the better. Usually, I mean, maybe it's not negative. Futaba was still really cool, but she wasn't being true to herself. She wasn't being the real her. So that's always like really saddening when you see that. And so I love that very early on in the beginning, we see her already making steps to want to change. Granted, that was not, I think, purposeful, because Kyo was the one that was the catalyst for the change, not just because he shows up, but because of what he says to her, and that really how he just sort of lets her not stay in this world of fakeness, so to speak, that he pushes her unknowingly, I guess unknowingly, to make changes in her life. And I think Futaba is a great character because she decides to make those changes. And even when she wants to at first sort of blame Kyo for this change happening, she realized that it was her, that it was her fault that she's in this position. I will say, with all of this, the foreshadowing was incredible. So when I read this, I didn't see any kind of foreshadowing. I was just like, we're in an Iwasaki Saka manga. Let's just dive in. And I'm focused purely on the romance. But as I was watching the anime, the foreshadowing, things that are said, was so good. It was so well set up. And I was just like, wow, like it was just really, really good. And I will say that with my Goodreads, or my reviews on Goodreads, I said a lot, or like I quoted a lot of quotes in my reviews, because just things that were spoken were absolutely wonderful. Like there was, oh man, I'm pretty sure it was in this first volume. Yes, right here. She says, Futaba says, I learned that letting go is a strength in itself. I'm stronger than I was before. In literally every single volume, I feel that is so true. That's not to say that there is not drama and that there aren't decisions and mistakes that were made. And I'm debating if I want to talk about that now, because that seems a little bit ahead. So let's just stay on Futaba. And oh my goodness, why I'm here, I don't know if anybody realized this. I actually told a friend about it. But you know how like they have these parental advisories here? Have you ever read it? Because if you read it, it says, AO HARU RIDE is rated T for teen and is recommended for ages 13 and up. This volume contains the awkwardness of youth. I don't know if you can see it. No, my camera's not going to zoom in on it. But each volume has something different. So volume 1 has the awkwardness of youth. So I have volume 5 that's next. Volume 5 says contains the insecurity of youth. Volume 4 says the redemption of youth. And each manga literally has a different thing that it spotlights that says it contains so-and-so of something. And I just love that. I thought that was such a cool little touch. And I'm like, that is totally Iwasaki Saka. I love that it had all of these. The romance at the beginning of this volume was very much everything. I really, really enjoyed it. But yes, Futaba, she is just an amazing character to me. And I love seeing her growth through the progression of this series. It was very hard seeing her make choices that I'm just like, Futaba, like, don't do it. Like, don't compromise who you are ever. I do feel like it does show her as a character, that it shows how much the people around us really influence our choices. That's not always a bad thing, because sometimes you have great friends, but they will sometimes give you maybe advice or say things that lead you to make a different decision than maybe what your heart really wants to do, but you're striving to go for that. Futaba, I guess in many ways, is very much a people pleaser. And being an people pleaser myself, I found a lot of her decisions very relatable. I don't think I changed who I was completely or anything like that, but just she's a very relatable character. I don't really know where to go from there, because it would go into spoilers, but her growth from who she is in the beginning, how she works on herself for herself, and then sort of forgets that because you get caught up in a romance or girl or guy that you like, and then she has to come back to who she is and learning to do things for herself, not because she likes this person, not because her friend said that she should like this person, or her friend said she should do this, or because of what she feels society says as a whole. Like, she has to come back, so to speak, to the basics of who she is and learning to make her decisions for herself. And so I love that through this whole manga. I mean, it definitely gets messy. I felt not the middle, but when a certain character comes on screen, or on the scene, I should say, things get a lot more complicated, and you definitely see that friendships, relationships are never simple. They are never just black and white. They're never easy. There's a lot of different feelings. There's a lot of different emotions that are involved that influence you again of what you decide to do. And this series explores that. This is manga. This is fictional. It definitely like what did she say? I think Io Saki said that in one of her like afterwards or something, that romantic realism, just that she was trying to capture this romanticness on page, and she does, but she does not shy away from real life dilemmas, in my opinion, of that, again, relationships are never simple, they are never easy, and there's always so many emotions involved, again, that these characters do not always make the best decisions, that people get hurt, they hurt themselves, they hurt other people, and that was a really hard part of this series. In fact, I think it was somewhere in these volumes right here. In these no, it was further than that, I think. I think it was in volumes 10 and 11, actually, that I gave one of them 3 stars because I just did not like the decisions that were made. I was like, did I forget how much I loved the beginning of this series and how great the romance is? And this is so much more than a romantic story, and I think that's what I forgot. And then I got to volume 12, and everything that I was hoping for from the beginning of this series, not just romantically wise, but with the decisions and who Futaba is, that it finally just shines in volume 12. I was like, I see now what Yosaki Saka was trying to say. She captures all the nuances of relationships so incredibly well. Yes, it's sometimes hard, and yes, there are times where I'm like, this is too much for my adult heart. There's too much angst going on, and there's some drama and whatnot, but I'm almost hesitant to say it's drama because I feel like she just captures those emotions as you're a teenager so very well, how much more complicated it is, and I know I keep saying that, but I really just feel like this series captured that in such a beautiful light, though it's really hard, I feel like, when you're reading, and I would just encourage readers, like, to keep reading Futaba's story because she grows so much. And since we're here, let's go and talk about Kyo, which I really, really like Kyo. Like, I don't know what it is about his character, but honestly, I feel like he is in the top 5 favorite shoujo male heroes for me. I don't know. I don't know what it is. I know the anime was amazing because the voice actor that does Kenma and Haikyuu did his voice, and it was everything. It was perfection, and it made me really happy. Kyo is such an interesting character. I didn't love him at the beginning. It was interesting because trying to think of how to word this without going into spoilers, him and Futaba have I feel like a pretty open relationship, in all honesty, or friendship, and that they're not afraid to be who they really are, and he knows how wishy-washy she is, and he even says that to her. But the thing is, she makes a comment that he is like the sunrise before the sunrise has actually risen. So that point where you don't know if it's night or day, that really explains who Kyo is as a person. But the more you get to know about him and you learn more about his past, and I just feel like my heart was so heavy for him. Yosaki Saka's male heroes are everything. I really love the way that she writes just her male characters. I feel like they're very realistic and they're very relatable, and I love how they're not afraid to make really hard decisions, even though Kyo made a hard decision I absolutely did not like whatsoever, but I felt it was true to who he was. It was a turning point for him, and I think it was this volume or volume 11, where honestly he has this incredible moment where you know Kyo has changed. The friendships that were involved in that moment where they see that point of change was so beautiful. I definitely teared up. I had a few moments of those because it's finally at that moment where you're like, the characters, yes, they loved each other at the beginning, they were there for one another and whatnot, but they had not changed, and they had to go through all of these things that happen to change. Even if I really didn't want some people involved to be hurt or be affected, because it's hard. It's hard seeing your friends get hurt or other people, and you're just trying to figure out your own stuff and then throw in other people, and it makes it that much more complicated. So much of that is what happens. Kyo is more outgoing, I feel like, than Ren is from Strobe Edge, and I think I liked Kyo a little bit more because of that, because it was a little bit it was a lot easier, I think, to relate to Kyo. He says things, and I think that's what it is, that is just so on point. Like, there's a conversation that he has with Futaba. It was about food, and he tells her that he doesn't like skinny girls, and he's like, it's okay to be a little bit pudgy. And she's like, what guy would ever say that? And he's like, I said that. And I just love that about Kyo. It's like, you go, man, you rock. He's not afraid to be blunt at times, but he does have a very caring heart. And I'm so glad that Futaba does see that, because it does help make him more of a likable hero, especially when times he can be sort of mean to Futaba and even says like that she's not a girl. I love how there's times where he's much quicker to apologize and realizes he took out his anger or his aggression on her. They just have a great friendship. They really do. Oh my goodness. As I said before, I love the cast of characters. So let's talk about Yuri, who has to be one of the cutest shoujo side characters I've ever read. And I honestly wish I could say a bunch of things about her that happen later on, because I really, really loved her character. From the very beginning when we first meet her all the way to the end, she was one of my favorites. I loved her story. I loved how she and Futaba just have this fantastic friendship. Like, that is one of my favorite parts about this series, is the girl friendships are so deep and the honesty that is there, because Futaba, again, she's struggling with her own emotions, what she's feeling, and she comes to a point where she realizes how important Yuri's friendship is to her. Maybe that doesn't show in the very beginning, but you definitely see it as the volumes go on. It is so beautiful. Like, I just love their honesty and how open they are and how they're not afraid to cheer one another on, how they get angry sometimes at each other, especially when the others will say, are you being true to yourself, and wanting them to make decisions for them. I do love how Yuri cares for her and really wants the best for her and is thinking, what can I do to help Futaba in different things that are going on that happen in the story that I won't say, because it shows the depth of their friendship and just the importance of it, and how even though, yes, Kyo is a great guy and there's other male characters that come up and there's relationships and romances that form, but I still feel that the girl friendships are above that they're not willing to break their friendship apart for a boy. And I just really love seeing that on page so very much. And there's more to that. I was about to go into spoilers by accident. This was a really pivotal volume and a lot of things that were coming open and out. It was just so very beautiful. I really, really enjoy Yuri and her friendship with Futaba. It's just great. It's just great. I don't know what else to say that doesn't go into spoilers, but she only gets more and more cuter as the manga goes on. Like I said, every time that she came on page, I just felt so happy, especially when another character is involved. It was just so wholesome. It was so very sweet, and she's just one of those characters that just makes you happy when she's on screen, and or on page, and just know is going to, I think, help make the other characters around her have a brighter day, even if it's only sort of temporarily and in that moment, but they just know that she's always going to be there. She's always going to give her support. She's going to stand strong with them, and it's so incredibly beautiful. Again, the girl friendships in this manga were my absolute favorite. I really, really loved it. There is another girl right here, Shuko, and oh my goodness, I love her so very much. I think I could say it without it being a spoiler, but I will just say that when it comes to the romance for her, involving her, it was so very good. This has one of the best examples of, I'm not sure how to finish that because I'm like, I don't want to spoil it for anybody, but I thought that her romance was extremely well done, and I loved just how the situation was handled so incredibly well by the other person that was involved. It was really good. That's all I could say about the romance things, but I really loved her growth as a character as well. Like, she surprised me because she's very quiet. You don't know much about her. You don't always know what she's thinking. She's pretty blunt and doesn't get excited very much, so it's hard to tell when she is, except for when it involves one certain person. And so it's hard to tell what she's thinking, but as she opens up, I really loved getting to know her more and how she's with Futaba and Yuri as well. Again, specifically how she grows as a character all the way up to the final volume. I don't know if I should show the cover for this final volume because this is a spoiler, so I'm not going to share it, but I will say volume 13 is my favorite cover. I'm like, I have to get it just for the cover alone. I love seeing her character really explored in that final volume. So if you really like her character and you're curious about where it's going to go, read to the very end because you get so much in this final volume. This is the back cover. The back cover's fine. You get so much of it in this this final volume, excuse me, and it was so wonderfully done. Talking, I guess, about her, there is one other character that I absolutely loved, and it goes all the way back to, oh, there he is. This guy right here, Kominato, yeah, that's his name. Yes, Kominato is such an amazing character. I love him. He is another great male hero. Again, just how Io Sakisaka writes these male heroes is so fantastic, and I love how he was outside of the norm. He just shows, I feel like, a different kind of a wonderful hero that I absolutely adored. I loved when he was on page. I loved his friendship with Kyo. Like, he is not afraid to say it how it is. He was one of my favorite characters for sure in the manga because he just says things to Kyo like how it is. He's blunt, but he's also very caring as well. And I loved getting to know more about him and get his backstory. It was so wonderful. Like, he is such a fantastic character, and I'm so glad that he was best friends with Kyo, how he cared for them, how they began to grow closer as friends. It was so great. I really enjoyed seeing him on page. He is another bright character, just like Yuri. He was amazing. I mean, both of these guys were awesome, but Kominato was just, he's just special. This was another example of another male character that just wants to steal your heart because he's just so great and so wonderful in so many different ways. It was such a great story. I mean, it has its ups and downs. Again, a lot of readers said it was messy, and I would second that. But I feel like when you get to the end, you just see this overarching message that the manga was just trying to show, and it makes you just that more thankful for the relationships that formed, for the friendships that remained strong, for everybody that grew together. And I would just also say grew individually as a person, which was like the biggest thing. And that was what I really loved about the beginning of this series, because Strobe Edge from the very beginning, you know, Ninako is asking what is love. And so there's that romantic focus, which is perfectly fine because I love that. But I did love with AO HARU RIDE that we see Futaba wanting to change in the beginning, not because she likes somebody, but because she wants to be true to herself and be who she really is and be able to freely be that person. I was so invested into these characters and seeing their growth and seeing their ups and downs that it was hard when you see them not make good decisions and you see them, like I said, revert back to who they once were, when you see all the growth that they've made up to this point. Granted, it can be hard sometimes when you're like, oh, there's so much drama, but I do feel like it's meaningful with everything that happens, and that Io Sakisaka really chose situations with care, even though she says that she loves dramatic scenes and whatnot. But it was very beautiful, and I'm just so glad that I read this series. Again, I don't know if I could say which series was my favorite between these, because they are just, I don't know, I love the cast of characters, but I love the story better in Strobe Edge, but I love the characters more in AO HARU RIDE. So it's hard to say. They both are awesome though, and I would definitely recommend both, but we're talking about AO HARU RIDE, Lara. We're not talking about Strobe Edge, but I guess it was hard not to compare them, though I didn't mean to compare them. It was just sort of happening. Oh, and I almost forgot. Yes, in the final volume, we get a Strobe Edge short story, and I was completely here for it because it had Toda, and I loved him in Strobe Edge. He had such a minor role, but that is one time that was like, there's no romance there whatsoever, but I would not be upset if there was. Though reading that short story definitely made me thankful there was no romance in Strobe Edge, but it was so very good. I was so happy because I was like, man, people told me that AO HARU RIDE had a Strobe Edge short story, but I'm like, where is it? There's not really any short stories here. So I expect a lot of emotions, a lot of feels when you read this series. It is so good, and just one that I hope that I can come back. I was trying to find volume 1. We'll just do this one because I don't know where volume 1 is, and it's one that I hope that I can go back and reread, especially now that I know the ending. It was so very sweet. The art is absolutely amazing, and yes, I am so glad that people recommend this to me. It makes me want to read her other series now, because I only have volume 1, but that is Love Me, Love Me Not, because I forgot how great Io Sakisaka's work is. I mean, I've heard people say that she's the queen of shoujo manga. I'm sure not everybody would agree with that, but I do feel that it is a worthy title for just her storytelling and her art and the beauty that she creates, not just in the art itself, but in the storytelling. It is just an amazing and wonderful experience, and just reminds you how wonderful people are in general. We have our ups and downs, but when we come together, not just like in a romantic sense, but when we come together as a community, it is a powerful and wonderful thing, and that we are always growing and learning as individuals. I would love to hear from you, friends. Have you read AO HARU RIDE? What did you think? Who were some of your favorite characters? And if you haven't read this, have you read any of Kiyosaki Saka's other works? And if you haven't read those, what are some romantic shoujo manga titles you would recommend? Because I would love to hear from you, friends. And if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. And thank you so much for watching. Bye!